Hello, my name is Karen Hughes, and I'm the Domestic Violence Clinical Services Coordinator for the Life Crisis Center, and I want to welcome you to Life Crisis Today. Human trafficking is something that we often hear in the news, and we often think, oh my gosh, that's not anybody I know, but we feel sorry for the people that might be involved with that. But also, how do people get help, and where do they go, and what kinds of needs do they have? We have a program for that. We're going to be talking about it. What is human trafficking? I don't know about you, but I used to think it was just sex trafficking. There's a lot more to it. So let's talk about it today. And with me is Erin LaFew, and she is one of the case managers for the Life Crisis Center. Welcome, Erin. Sex trafficking is something, as I said, I always think that's what trafficking is, but it's more. It's a lot more. Why don't we define what is trafficking?
Sex trafficking for an adult, it's unwillingly providing sexual services for profit. And for adults, so that would be people 18 and over, you have to prove force, fraud, or coercion.
Oh, okay.
And there are different trafficking styles that are used. So you have your Romeo style. So that's promising a lavish dream life if you'll only do this one thing. And it's just one time, and it's for us, it's for our relationship, for our future. But then it quickly becomes another time and another time.
Right.
There's also the guerrilla style, and that's when physical force is used, and it's the main tool for getting compliance from the victim. And then there's substance exploitation. And for that, that's withholding drugs from them when they need that hit.
Right.
Until they meet a certain quota.
Ooh, okay.
So they have to have so many clients in order to be given that.
Right, right. I also know we worry about kids, that kids can be snatched and made into go into trafficking. And then when we, again, think of it, we think of sex trafficking. And there is sex trafficking in children. Yes.
And the snatching off the streets, the white van, that's not typically what you see. Not that it couldn't happen,
Right.
but that's not normally what we see with sex trafficking of minors.
Okay.
So for minors, anyone under the age of 18 exchanging sexual services for items of value or money. So it could be food, it could be jewelry, it could be Fortnite V-Bucks. But if you're under 18, they can't consent to sex for profit.
Okay.
So it automatically becomes human trafficking for them. And most child trafficking occurs online in the form of explicit content for items of value. So they could be getting money sent to them, they could be getting currency and video games sent to them, DoorDash, Uber Eats, that kind of online exchange.
And there's some grooming that happens sometimes with sex trafficking too.
Yes, a lot of times when it's online, they'll meet in games or apps that are common with kids. So you have Fortnite, Roblox, Snapchat, different social media apps, and they will befriend them, and they will start talking to them each day. Little by little, they'll start feeling how far they can go. And then if they can go this far, they'll take it a little further, and they keep going until they gain the trust of the child.
Right. And then they start to exploit them and get them to do things.
Yes.
Yeah. There's also another type. It's called familial. What is that?
So that is one of the things that we see more often, and that's where family members use other family members for forced labor or for forced sexual services. Commonly seen as adults selling children for sexual services to obtain basic resources. So food, shelter, bills covered, rent, or drugs as well.
I also know children can be used like in family businesses and forced to work them that way as well.
Yes, and with the labor trafficking for minors, there has to be the force, fraud, or coercion. However, if it's sex trafficking with minors, then no force, fraud, or coercion has to be present.
Okay. And then there's elder trafficking.
Yes.
And I never, I mean, I know it because of where we work, but I never thought of that before. And it exists.
It does, and that's where elder adults who are vulnerable are exploited for sex or labor purposes. And that's often where an adult child moves back in with their
Yes,
parent
yes.
to help care for them,
Yes.
but then slowly over time exploits their parent into a world of trafficking.
Right. Now, we've mentioned labor trafficking, and I know there's been some changes lately. Let's talk about labor trafficking, defining it and talking in more detail.
So for labor trafficking, that's using force, fraud, or coercion to force someone to work against their will.
Yeah, and we're seeing it here on the shore. Sometimes we think of it like the migrant workers, or because I know that people have had that problem, but it can be in lots of different ways. So more of what, is there more to it, or did it?
It can be seen in pretty much any industry or business, hospitality, so your hotels, your
Yes.
housekeeping, which we have a lot of here on the shore, fishing,
Oh,
farming.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, construction, pretty much anywhere, restaurants. So it can be found in any industry.
Right, and they can be adults or children.
Yes, but again, it has to be the force, fraud, or coercion, no matter how old they are.
Okay. Okay. Who is impacted with this?
So it can be anyone, but traffickers will look for vulnerabilities, and they'll use those vulnerabilities, or they may use loved ones as a form of control. Especially vulnerable are youth. Homeless youth present extreme vulnerabilities
They're very
there.
vulnerable. Yeah.
Yes. And they can be vulnerable for both labor or sex trafficking, especially when they don't know where their next meal is coming from or where they're going to be staying.
Right. And there's different types of things, like the domestic servitude and debt payoffs and things like that. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, so there's a domestic servitude. So that's forced to work long days in often wealthy households. So that could be like a nanny or a housekeeper. Then you have your debt bondage, and that's working to pay off a debt that is impossible to pay off. And that could be, for example, if someone was here from another country and someone paid for them to come, they paid for their transportation,
yes.
and they could say, it's $20,000, I'll get all your papers and I'll take care of everything and you'll come and work for me. But then they just keep adding to that debt, every little thing.
Right.
They
I'm
won't-
feeding you.
Yes, I'm housing
Yeah.
you, you had this, you had that, and then paying them so little that that debt will never be paid off. There's also forced criminality, and that's selling drugs for gangs or for doing any kind of crimes for them, and you see that often with youth, where they are running drugs, they're the ones that are stealing those kinds of things.
And I'm thinking, when you said about the servitude, you also mentioned kind of bringing somebody over and sponsorship.
Yes, so there can be the fraudulent sponsorship. So that's sponsoring a minor migrant to work on farms, but that sponsorship is not a valid one.
Okay.
And it becomes the same thing where they're trapped in that and they don't have any access to their papers.
Right.
There's no freedom to leave if they don't like where they are and they don't like the work, forced to work long hours for
Poor
little,
conditions to live in, too.
Yes, yeah, and little to no pay.
Right.
But
Yeah. So are there warning signs?
yes, so there are some things to look for. Someone might not be in control of their documents, and that could be U.S. citizens as well, if they don't have access to their social security card or their birth certificate or their IDs or their passport. So it's not just people that are here with other documents.
Right, right.
But if they don't have any control of those, someone else is holding them and won't give them to them. Youth that have extensive work experience, typically youth may work summer jobs or a part-time job. Many of our youth will work in Ocean City in the summer and those kinds of things. But if they're having extensive work experience, especially in industries that youth don't typically work in, that could be a sign. living and working in the same place, unable to leave under their own control, those kinds of things.
Yeah. Can this be reported?
It can. You can report it to the local law enforcement if you have any suspicions that either sex or labor trafficking is going on. We also have the National Human Trafficking Hotline number, and that is 888-373-7888. And you can also text info to 233-733, and that's for the National Human Trafficking Hotline.
Okay.
And then for human trafficking services here on the shore, you can call Life Crisis number as well.
And we are the regional program for trafficking in general.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Youth trafficking.
Yes. So it's youth and young adults.
Okay. So we can go from youth, little children to age
25.
25. Okay. And we stick with them
Yes.
until, they age out.
Yes. So some programs you can only be in them for a certain amount of time, or if you're a youth program and once they turn 18, sometimes they have to discharge. But for us, we're able to stay with them as long as they need.
Okay.
And there's no time limit on that. So as long as they're still in need of services, then we're able to continue working with them.
Great. Now there's a new law on child labor trafficking.
Yes. So in 2024, the legislative session passed a bill that now incorporates child labor trafficking as a form of child abuse, which requires mandated reports to report any signs of child labor trafficking.
Okay. So anyone can be a reporter. It doesn't have to be, I'm thinking of like teachers and counselors, it can be anybody that can do that reporting.
Yes. So if a child has said something, or if someone is seeing any of these signs, if they even just have a concern that it might be going on, then they can report it.
Okay. Your program, the Regional Navigator program.
Yes.
What is that? What do you do? What do you offer? What help do you provide?
So we provide a number of services. One would be preventative education for the community. So we work with schools, churches, community agencies. We do small groups for youth, and that's working with the community to better understand what human trafficking is, what the laws in Maryland are, what services are available, and then also working with the youth to understand what consent is, what vulnerabilities are, online safety, and then and then working with parents too on helping them talk to their kids and to understand, because not everyone's tech savvy either, and so sometimes
and it changes so much.
It does. So even when you are up to date on everything that's out there, something new pops up, and a lot of times the kids are going with whatever's new popping up, and so we work with them to be able to communicate with their kids and to understand what vulnerabilities their children may have. And we all have vulnerabilities.
Right, yes.
And so really anyone that has even access to the internet is vulnerable to human trafficking.
So that's the online stuff. What else do you, or the educational piece?
Yes.
What else is it that you do?
So we also have victim services.
Okay.
And so we do case management, court accompaniment, and advocacy for youth and young adults who have experienced human trafficking or they're at risk.
Okay.
So if there has been risky online behavior or any other concerns, then we can work with them as well, and we do a lot of that preventative education with them.
And so with the new mandates, that's really expanding everything you have to do.
Yes. So previously we were working with the sex trafficking, but now we are including labor trafficking as well.
Okay. Is there anything new in the practice, or is it still just offering the same type of services to everybody?
Same type of services. We just now include anyone who has been, who has experienced labor trafficking or who is at high risk for it.
Okay. So if somebody wants to make a referral, I know we work with agencies and they know how to make referrals to us. But if I'm just mama person or aunt's person or my neighbor or something, I am worried, what would I do?
You can contact the Life Crisis hotline and just request to speak to the Human Trafficking Department,
Okay.
and then we can do that referral.
And the hotline number is 410-749-4357.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll talk about that again. Is there anything else that we've talked about? Because we just went over a lot of different things. We talked about all the different types of trafficking and how this impacts people. And it is in our area.
Yes, we do see it. I think that that's one of the largest misconceptions
Yeah.
with trafficking is that it has to be a big city,
Right.
or it's just international or those kinds of things.
Right.
But we do see it here on the shore. It comes in many forms. It's often difficult to see at first. So it's just getting familiar with those warning signs, understanding grooming, and then if you have any concerns, because really we've barely scratched the surface here today. But if you have any concerns, then calling us, you can get more information. If you have any specific concerns, then we'd be happy to further discuss that with people.
Or if somebody is in a group and they want education, they can contact to
Yes.
have us come out, your program come out to offer that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we provide a number of groups and education for the community.
Anything else we forgot?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for all this information.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to thank you for joining us. As I said at the beginning, human trafficking is not something we think is in our backyard, but it is. So if you have anybody that you're worried about, or you just need somebody to talk to and question, please reach out. Or if you're having other issues and you just need someone to talk to, we do have a 24-hour hotline. And the hotline number is 410-749-HELP. Again, that number is 410-749-4357. We have a website, www.lifecrisiscenter.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Lots of ways to reach us. We have a couple of other programs besides the human trafficking. We also provide services for victims of abuse, whether it be a child who is abused or adults who are abused as a child, or adults of sexual assault or rape, adults of domestic violence. Please, if you need some services, see if it's something that we can help you with. Or if you need a referral, 211, we're a part of that. We're part of the National Suicide Hotline, and that number is 988. There's lots of ways to reach us. Please, don't struggle. Reach out if you need to. I also want to thank PAC 14 for helping make this show available. Thank you.